History on the go. I want to talk about the English trade with the Africans during the 16th century. 16th century, yeah. And why England even came into the trade in the first place. England came into the trade because of envy. They envied the Spanish, because the Spanish at that time had so-called discovered the New World, and they was actually conquering different areas of the New World. Peru, Mexico became part of the Spanish Empire, Spanish colonies, and they was using the Amerindian Indians to extract gold from those regions. So you had all these ships going across from the Atlantic into Spain and making Spain rich, powerful. At that time, England and Spain were like enemies of each other, because England had become Protestant in their belief in Christianity, and the Spanish were still Catholics. So that was one of the big things going on that was causing friction. The way Europeans were, the way they the attitudes towards each other was basically a lot of competition, and so that drew the English into this thing where we need to get a piece of this pie, this cake, you know, saying. And not only that, the Portuguese was in Africa, and they were doing their trade there. So these two European nations, southern nations, was growing in wealth and power. And so the English, the Dutch, the French, all of them was looking on and saying, you know something, we need to get a piece of this cake. We need to be in this thing. And that's what drove Europe to do more and more damage in Africa and in the New World, just to create wealth for themselves. It's like a competition. You had the British kings, English kings, like I think Charles II was one of the first kings to issue charters. A charter is it's like a license or something to say to map out, give license to merchants and different people in London to trade in Africa. And that's how this thing begins, because everything begins with order. It's not just like people just go to Africa of their own accord. It's done, commissioned by the king. And anyway, this guy named John Locke, I know there's more people, but John Locke is one person I want to just talk about. John Locke went to trade in Africa around about 1554. That's when he took his trip to Africa. He went via the Canary Islands, and from there he went onto the coast of Africa. What's notable about John Locke is that John Locke actually he didn't only bring back goods from Africa, he brought back at least 5 African men from Ghana. Now Ghana was not, there was no nation called Ghana at that point. The nation of Ghana was founded by Kwame Nkrumah, who renamed the region that was called the Gold Coast by the British and by the Portuguese. But that was much, much later, 1957. But anyway, go back to John Locke. John Locke didn't only bring back goods, he brought back, when he said he travelled down the coast of West Africa. They used to call that region, the main part of the region where he was trading, was Guinea. Now there's a nation called Guinea now, but Guinea was a much bigger area. Now all of these maps and names was all done by the English and different European nations, just to sort of map out Africa. That was their idea of what. That was their idea. It wasn't. There was no maps in Africa saying this nation's that nation's that. Africans had kingdoms, tribal kingdoms, nation ethnicities. They had empires. It was all, these borders wasn't as clear cut as what these Europeans made out. But anyway, that's another story altogether. John Locke went down the coast. He traded along the coast, and he finally, on his return journey in September, he brought back 400 pounds of gold. Doesn't say where he got the gold from. I reckon that would have been the Gold Coast. He brought back guinea peppers. Pepper was one of the trades that Africans traded for centuries, even traded peppers with the Arabs. He brought back another great big trade that comes out of Africa is ivory. Ivory's been coming out of Africa thousands of years. You find ivory coming out of Africa via through the Sudan and Nubia into Egypt, and that would have been thousands of years ago. So ivory has always been a big trade. And so these were the goods that came out. The African men that came with him wasn't slaves. They came there, they was taken there. That would have been under the agreement of a king. They wasn't kidnapped or nothing like that. They was taken there so they can learn English. And that's what used to happen. I'm going to go into that on another talk, how Africans sent their sons during the slave trade to learn English and to learn the British or English culture or French culture. And that was for the purpose of actual trade, nothing else and nothing less. So that's what kind of happened at how Britain kind of came into it. It was due to envy. So Britain never had no colonies at this point. John Locke, he brought those goods back to England on his return journey. So that wasn't a triangular trade that came later. Now, the first person that entered like something that what we recognize as triangular trade would have been John Hawkins. John Hawkins actually went to Africa specifically, and this was much later. This is Queen Elizabeth I is on the throne now, and this is 1500 and something, 70 I think it is. And so John Hawkins said, you know something, I need a piece of this cake, this trade that the Portuguese and the Spanish is dealing with. See, the Portuguese now was in Africa. They've been in Africa from the early 1400s. They came into Africa. One of the main reasons, I'm not going to go into all the reasons, one of the main reasons they came into Africa was to cut off the gold trade from the Arabs. The Arabs was trading the gold from the Africans, especially in the large empires of, like, say, Songhai. They would have been trading across the Sahara Desert. Now, the Portuguese idea was to go around Africa and then get to the source of the gold and then trade directly. That's why Portugal was there long time before the English. But we had, after John Locke, we had other people going to Africa. But the first person to go there to trade in slaves now, in human beings, in a human cargo, because slavery, kidnapping people or buying people from other nations has been something that humans have done since the beginning of time. I want to make that clear, and I will touch other slave areas or slave stories in the future, like white slavery of white people in Africa. There was actually a slave trade in whites, Europeans in North Africa. That's another thing altogether. So John Hawkins now, he was the first guy, English guy, to go into that trade. And he went specifically into that trade. I learned about John Hawkins in school, but I never learned that he was a slave trader. So anyway, John went to Africa on his first voyage, and he said he took a Portuguese ship. In other words, he captured it. He was a privateer, commissioned by the Queen Elizabeth I to actually rob ships that didn't belong to them, ships that were considered maybe their enemies, Catholic ships or whatever. That's what he used to do. A privateer was almost like a license by their own government or their own sovereign to go and do things like that. And it was almost like within European law, it was almost like okay to do. Other nations would do it to the English, you know, if they were their enemies. So that's how he got his first captives. He robbed that ship along the coast of Africa. Then he went onto the coastline, and he said he got more slaves that way. He kidnapped a certain amount of slaves, and then he took them back to the Caribbean. He actually sold them, got some good goods, probably sugar, different things, and took it back to England, and then he sold those goods there. Then he reported to the Queen of England, who actually was totally, according to the account, she said she would call down heaven on him. In other words, what are you doing selling human beings? Obviously she was totally against it, but then she changed her tune when he told her the profits that he had made. And from that, she said that what I would do, I would send you back to Africa in another ship, her own ship. And that ship was called Jesus of Lubeck. That was the name of the ship, Jesus of Lubeck. And he went back to Africa. He was attacked on the coast, according to his journal. 7 of his men was killed. I'm going to stop here and make a little point that this story that you get from some people, that Africans was just being captured along the coast for 400 years, it's absolute lie. If you notice, I said John Hawkins did that. I don't know if I mentioned the Portuguese did that, but it was only done for a short time. This is going to be another video. We'll talk a bit more about that. But John Hawkins tried to do that again. I think he did it the first time. After he robbed the ship, he didn't went onto the coast. He tried it again, but then he was attacked by this African kingdom. It doesn't say what kingdom it was. He was attacked, lost 7 of his men. And that's when he negotiated with a king. It doesn't say whether it was the same king. I'll have to elaborate on that. He negotiated with a king to come up with an idea. This was the deal. And this is what the English did in America also with the American Indians. What they did, he said that to the king, I will help you fight your enemies. Because the king had enemies. In Africa, people had enemies. Don't think that Africa had this glorious kind of civilization where no one had wars. There was wars going on before Europeans came, and there's wars going on before Arabs came. So this John Hawkins made this deal with this king, and the deal was, we will actually go to war or go to a battle to fight this enemy of yours, and we will share the spoils. And that's what happened. He went to war at night time. They raided the village. The people was terrified. According to the account, some of them was jumping into the swamps. They were trying to get away, while these Hawkins and the African ruler of this other people was just killing the people. And they took the captives, shared the captives, and John Hawkins took these captives back to the Caribbean, did the same thing again, and made a lot of profit. Now that's how John Hawkins came into it. So John Hawkins wasn't just this guy that was exploring and doing all these things. He was actually, in my eyes, he was we would look back now and say he was just wicked in some of the things that he done. And I'm not here to sort of put down English people, nothing like that, but I'm just here to talk about real history. And if there's any wickedness, it's not only on the part of John Hawkins. The king or the ruler or the chief that he made that deal with also had his issues, and he was able to go and kill people because they were his enemies, and he got help from this English guy who had guns. And so wickedness or wrongdoing is in the hearts of people from all different backgrounds. Some people get more benefit from what they do, and some people get less benefit. Maybe the king of that nation got a certain amount of benefit. He captured these enemies, he subdued them, he would have enslaved them. That's what would have happened, and then he would have had the upper hand in that region. I hope you learned something from that, picked up something new, something fresh. Just hopefully you subscribe to my channel. This is History on the Go. Thank you.